Hi everybody, welcome back to part 7 of the Trumpeter Bismarck build, the 200 scale kit. Last time I got the main decks for the upper deck fitted, and in this episode I'm going to be building the first of the lower part of the superstructure. The upper part of these two pieces of superstructure formed the superstructure deck, not surprisingly, known in German as the Aufbau deck, and Trumpeter provide these in two elements. So these are slide moulded elements. They've got quite a lot of detail along the sides of them, but in this episode I'm going to be removing most of that and replacing it with parts from the Pontos set. There's a separate forward superstructure section as well. Both of these superstructures house the second and third main turrets, so turret Bruno and turret Caesar at the back here. And in this episode I'm going to be concentrating on the aft superstructure. I've not got a lot of time this week. I've been cracking on with the Mosquito for 2 or 3 days this week, so I've only got a day on this, but hopefully we'll get this cleared and we'll start to fit some of the Pontos brass to it. So I'll get the hull out of the way, clear the bench, and we'll make a start. Okay, so I'm going to make a start now. These are the Pontos instructions that we're interested in, and this whole sheet covers the superstructure elements and the parts that are going to need to be removed from the Trumpeter plastic and added from various parts of the Pontos set. So we're going to be concentrating on this aft section, which is Z2 in the Trumpeter kit. So we're concentrating on these two drawings here, which show the port and starboard side, and you can see there's an awful lot of detail to be sorted out along this port side to start with. So there's a combination of new vents to make up, doors, portholes, scuttles and new righoles, various other pieces of detail as well, some reels to make up. So quite a big job, and I'll concentrate on this side to start with, so the port side. So the first thing I'm going to do is clear some of this Trumpeter detail, but I'm going to be cautious about it because Pontos don't give us a drawing which shows you what to remove. You've just got to work it out from the schematic here. So the first thing is to get a nice new blade in the X-Acto knife. This is a number 17 chisel blade, and I'll start from the forward edge and start to remove some of this detail. Removing detail from this concave surface here is a bit tricky to do with a knife, just because you risk gouging the surface a little bit more than on a flat. So I'm just going to use this mid-grade round file just to get into the concave surface and get this vent moulding removed. getting down to the surface now, so I'll just switch over to a fine file. The marks here with the pen are witness marks really, and what they do is as you're sanding or filing the surface detail away, you'll eventually wear the ink away until you get down to the bulkhead, and when you've removed the ink from the bulkhead you'll know that you've got all the surface detail off. So it's just a useful little device to make sure that you have cleared the mouldings off that you need, because it's often the case that when you think you've got down to the surface and you've got it nice and flat, when you put the primer and paint on you realise that you can see a ghost shadow of the moulding in the surface, which means that you haven't quite got down flat. So this is a good device to make sure that you can do that. You can see the surface detail coming away under the file. And you can see the ink being removed at the same time from the high spots. So all the ink's gone. So I know now that I'm down to the bulkhead. I'll just work through with various grades of sanding stick again. And we now know that that's perfectly clean, ready for the photo etch. So I'm going to work along this bulkhead now, get all this cleared. I've had second thoughts about putting the photo etch on as I went along because it's very delicate and I'm probably going to knock it off as I work along the part. So I'll work along the whole part now, get it cleared, and then we'll come back with the photo etch. Okay, so an hour's work and I've cleared both sides of the superstructure and I'm ready for some photo etch. Now most of the photo etch that will apply here is single piece, so things like the wriggles and porthole scuttles and so on, some of the various hatches, doors, they're all single parts, but there are a couple of vents on either side that have to be made up from several pieces of etch brass, and I'll put those together first, then we can just have a session where we just fit all the photo etch together. So I'll just put that to one side for a moment and get these vents built up. So we've got 3 frets that we're going to be using in this part of the build to fit the details to these bulkheads. But the vents are on this fret, which is part of the advanced set, so I'm not sure, you wouldn't get these I don't think in the basic set. So I've 2 to make to start with. They will fit in this recess here. So Trumpeter had moulded 4 just raised panels for these vents. So these should add quite a bit more extra detail to them. I'm just going to use some thin super glue for this. Now sometimes I'd use my extra thin, but unfortunately with the hot weather I left them out on the shelf in the sunlight and it's actually gone off. So I'm going to have to get some more. It's completely ruined. So I'll have to make do with the thin style. The next set of vents are a bit more complex than that. They've got separate louvers on them. We've got some tiny little brackets for the louvers which have to be bent just up through 90 degrees. Just one tip: if you don't like building photo etch vent grills, then don't build the Bismarck with the Pontos set, because they're all over the place. I've got a full sheet of photo etch grills to build. They do look nice though when you've got them. So for this particular section I've just got 2 of these to do, which isn't so bad. It's not a case of having to do them all at once. It's nice to get these first vents done. The ones with the louvers on are quite a bit more fiddly than these plain ones, but they do look nice. Under a coat of paint I'm sure they'll add quite a lot to the model. Okay, we'll start to put some of the detail on this now, and I've learned from the port side, which I've finished, or just about finished, that the first thing we have to do is to get what looks like an electrical conduit which runs right the way along the superstructure just below the deck level, and we need to put that on because it determines the position of all the other photo etch detail on this bulkhead. So those are the first things to do. They also have to fit round some of the Trumpeter plastic parts that we've got to fit, so I'm going to do those couple of bits first, then the conduits, then we'll fit the rest of the photo etch. A lot of these parts on ship models are very small, and sometimes it's easier to get rid of the mould seam while the part's still on the sprue. That's what I'm doing there, and then we can just snip it off at the connection point. And that's ready to go. The conduits are all on this fret here, and they're actually quite confusing. The numbering's pretty tight on this fret, and it's difficult to pick out one from the other. But I'm just going to work from the Pontos illustration and locate the correct section that we want. You can see it's pretty delicate stuff and quite a complicated shape as well. These are all individual parts. The trick with these I've found is just to do them a section at a time. They're far too fragile and the positioning's so precise on them that to try and get them fixed in one movement, it's just not possible really. So I've had to cut this piece to go around this lamp, but I'm just going to leave this section off that I've cut until I put the next piece in place. Now that I've got this piece in, I can now join it up to the previous part that we fitted. So that was a little bit of a cheat there, cutting the section to go round this lamp, but it's a neater way of doing it. At this point it's when I wish I had some of my super thin super glue, because it would be ideal to just wick that along this piece of brass and get a really solid join all the way along. As it is, I'm going to have to use the thin, which isn't quite as good. I could put the extra thin straight in from the bottle and it would just wick along here. The next section has to go around this curve just at the top here. So obviously that's going to need bending quite a bit, but what I'm going to do is just push it down gradually around the curve just to blend it in. So I just want to tack it in position at the front. Got some sort of obstruction there that I haven't noticed. So just tacked at this end. It's not going to go anywhere at that point. And it's a good idea to just level it up at this end as well. That means that as you're pushing it down into this concave section of the bulkhead, you know it's going to stay at the right level. So I carefully want to start bending this down into this recess. And again, just adding a little bit of the CA, a little bit at a time. Just gradually work around. This is pretty delicate photo etch, so you've got to treat it with a bit of respect. It'll bend if you are ever so slightly rough with it, so just be careful. And at that point we can bend it around the bulkhead and along the next run. Do the doors next, and these are provided so that you could actually pose them open if you wanted to, or at least slightly ajar, but I'm going to have them all closed. You'd have to do a little bit of work to open the reverse side up, or open a hole in the bulkhead to get them to look right, so I'm just going to close them up. So they just need a spot of glue on the inside, glue them shut. Fitting the doors just gives us a useful reference, another visual reference to the fitting of the next parts. And the more parts you fit, the easier it is to recognise where the next one's going to go, because this is quite a complicated part of the build in terms of the number of parts that we're fitting at this stage. Next I'll fit the porthole surrounds, wriggles and covers. These are mainly the type where the covers are hinged downwards, but not all of them, so just need to be careful which style we put in where. I think there's 3 or 4 different styles on this bulkhead, and the majority are this style which has the hinge down. So according to my workings out, we need 19 of these. I'm just fitting these dry at the moment. And then just drop some medium CA into the centre. Just make sure that they're all level. On the Trumpeter kit, the covers here are just moulded circles, and they're quite a bit smaller than this. So these are a big improvement on what's provided from Trumpeter. So I'll work along the bulkhead, get all this style of wriggle porthole fitted, then we'll come back and look at the next step. This next style doesn't have a wriggle on it. This is a unique one as well. This just has the wriggle which goes straight at one side. This one has the cover to the left. So that's all the various styles of portholes. I think there were probably 5 styles there, but obviously it makes the whole of the bulkhead very accurate. Next, there are a number of vents that run along the upper side of the bulkhead. We'll do those next. So again, I'm going to work along the bulkhead, fit all these little vents and their doors, and then I think we'll be getting towards the end of finishing this particular bulkhead. This next part is, well, it just looks like a box that has to be folded up. These are the vents that we made earlier. And I think actually we've got a bit of a problem with these because the anatomy of the ship shows that there are 4 sections to this vent. And actually in the Trumpeter kit, when I filed the moulding off, Trumpeter had provided 4 mouldings as well, so I think this is possibly wrong. The saving grace is that it's hidden behind one of the secondary guns, so it's not that obvious, and in any event it's better than the simple moulding that Trumpeter provided. It didn't even have any grill space on it. It was just 4 blocks. So I'll do a bit more research on that, see if I can see a photograph of the area. But as I say, I don't know whether I'll be able to do much about it, even if it proves that there should be 4 vents in this location. This is that nice louver vent that I built earlier on in the video. These are deflectors. These brackets are, well, they're ridiculously small really, and they have a fold on the end. So all in all, they're fairly tricky, and the hard bit about them is getting enough glue on them to get them to hold onto the bulkhead. Obviously they're just a butt joint onto the plastic, so there's not much there to hold them. So once I've just tacked them into place, I'll just get some thin super glue and just dab that underneath, and that should set it fairly firmly. And this is the last piece for this particular part of the assembly. Okay, so I'm going to leave it at that for this week. There's an awful lot of work involved in sorting these bulkheads out and getting the detail of the etched brass fitted, and it's taken its toll on my eyes this week. I need to give them a bit of a rest, get the video edited, and have a think about where we go next with this. Okay, so I'm going to leave it at that this week. It doesn't look much on the finished article, but there's an awful lot of work goes into fitting this Pontos photo etch. But it is worth it, I think. It adds an awful lot of extra detail to the model, and it really makes it look busy on these bulkheads. Some of the detail is far superior to the Trumpeter kit. The vents, for example, have got separate grills in. A lot of the moulded vents on the Trumpeter kit were just blobs, really, just plates, whereas these have got the proper grill detail. So add a lot to the model. The things like the porthole covers are also a lot more detailed than the Trumpeter kit. They were just circles moulded onto the bulkhead. They're a lot more detailed now. So I'm going to get some close-up photographs. It's hard to pick up some of that detail on video, so I'm going to get some really close-up photographs so you can see the difference that that work has made. And hopefully you'll agree that it was worthwhile. Now next time I'm going to be moving on and doing the same process but with the forward superstructure. So I want to get to the point in the next couple of weeks where I can get the decks fitted on these and fit them to the rest of the ship. So we'll see how we go. There's the same amount of work on this forward superstructure as I've done this week, so it's another full week to do that, and then probably another week to get them ready to fit to the hull. But we'll press on. I've got a couple of projects going on at the moment. As you know, I've got the Mosquito approaching completion. I'm going to do a little bit more work on that this week. But I'll get on as well with the Bismarck and get the forward superstructure done as well. And I'll bring you that work next Friday as a premiere. Usual time, 8 o'clock. So I hope you can join me for that, everybody. In the meantime, look after yourselves, stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.